Hello, and welcome to Last Epoch. Tonight, I'll be beginning my journey through this game and calmly speaking to you to lull you into a sense of security and slumber. We start our journey tonight as the Rogue, one of my favorite classes to play in this game, and a beautiful example of class design in any ARPG. I've played a lot of Last Epoch since it came out. I've come back for just about every single season of this game. And though it is under the hands of some new developers, I would rather see the game live on than die. However, I do not plan to be monetarily supporting this game via microtransactions or purchasing any new class that they may come out with. But so be it. They wish to keep the game alive, and they think that that is the best option for them to do so. So, there's nothing we can really do now that the decision has been made, other than not support the AI slop that they are probably going to feed into this game. Really quick before we get further into the video. There are many games that I enjoy playing, many ARPGs out there that are nostalgic, and I haven't played in a very long time. So if you have anything that you would like to see on this channel, go ahead and leave it down in the comments below. I'm all ears, and I've been a gamer since I was a kid, so I'm more than happy to listen to any feedback or suggestions. So the second zone here, we are making our way through this burning forest. Personally, I love a lot of the area design in this game. The story is compelling enough for an ARPG, as much as they can be. I really do believe that Path of Exile has a great story. And Path of Exile 2 is also shaping up to be a wonderful experience, story-wise. So, Grail here is the first NPC we run into, the warrior trapped in this cycle. And we are going to make our way over to Keeper's Camp to try to find out exactly what the cause of all of this calamity is. Currently, Flurry is our builder in terms of getting mana, and we're using Shadowrend, what I believe is a new skill for our main DPS functionality. I am following a max roll guide simply for the sake of being able to focus on speaking as well as staying calm and keeping the low moments of this video to a minimum. Can't exactly call it a video if I sit in town theory crafting a build for, well, let's say 40 minutes. If this were Path of Exile, I'm sure that length would be much, much longer. But primarily through the leveling process, we'll be playing melee until we get to the end of the game, where I plan to swap to the popular Ballista build. It looks very amusing to play, a little on the high intensity side for the lack of defenses available to the character. But other than that, it does seem fun. And it also seems like it absolutely destroys most of the content in the end game. And personally, I haven't really done a whole lot of monolith content in Last Epoch. This game was very fun for its interwoven map, and I genuinely did enjoy many of the side quests in it. But for now, we're playing the Rogue. We have actually just unlocked our first skill specialization. So, we're going to be putting that directly onto Shadowrend. And go ahead and click this. And then specialize and in intensity. That'll just be giving us some extra damage to pump out whenever we are using the skill. Checking our inventory, we do have a better torso. We'll slap that on really quick. And we shall also allocate our skill points momentarily. Selling off our excess gear. And I think I am going to go ahead and turn the UI volume down a little bit here. If you are wondering where the music I have put this video to is from, it's from a very, very small channel called Where You Rest. A link to their music will be down in the description below if you wish to simply listen to their music to fall asleep without me speaking. So, we are entering the Fortress Gardens. This is an area that is fairly straightforward. Nothing too of interest here. We're going to run past a couple of enemies and get on with our day. Maybe we'll pick up a level on the process. I have been told that I have a distinctly soothing voice. So, after watching a few other YouTube channels do something of a similar content as this, I figured I might throw my hat in the ring. I do voice act for a living, so maybe that is a slightly unfair advantage, but maybe it puts me at a disadvantage because I have never done anything like this before. Regardless, up the fortress walls we go, and here is where we'll have our first side quest that awards some extra skill points. The rogue has a wide variety of skills available at their disposal, and genuinely a lot of fun and interesting playstyles. But the one that I have enjoyed the most so far is probably the Shadow Blades build. Well, this is what I get for running past enemies. We have been crit and died. But such is life. Why don't we go ahead and put our skill points in to raise our attack speed and dexterity ever so slightly. One thing I feel ARPGs do incredibly well is incremental player power. They have systems in place that allow your character to grow at a steady pace if done right, and truly allow your build and your playstyle to flourish, which I think is very cool. We're going to kite some enemies for a little bit here. Also, I think in future videos, I will most likely use my quieter keyboard, because this mechanical one is quite loud sometimes. So I apologize if that is a noise that distracts you. So here is our first mini-boss that actually stands a threat to us. The pillars of fire it brings down aren't too much of a threat, but when it does its breath attack, that can be a little spooky. Although I suppose it's not a breath attack. It's these waves of fire that it creates. Last Epoch does an incredible job of letting you sort of pick what playstyle you want, no matter what class you're playing. Which is one of the reasons I genuinely enjoy this game. It does have its flaws, and it is still buggy at some times. But let's be honest, what game these days doesn't have those issues? I do think, and I do hope, that if people continue to support this game, and they want to see it do well, that it receives more content in the near future. Granted, yes, the endgame league mechanics that are available are fun and can be interesting. But there's also a large issue of RNG is the best way that I can put it, towards the end of this game, where much of your gear progression and the like don't feel very deterministic. And Last Epoch is very deterministic on the crafting side. If you've never played this game before, then we'll get into that in a while. But here is our first side quest, to head over to the storerooms and destroy a massive piece of armor in the storeroom. Personally, I feel incredibly squishy at the moment. And I'm not sure how much better that will be. Most likely it's because I basically skipped a zone to come here, but we are on par with the level of this area. We also haven't been able to find a single weapon upgrade either, which has been a little unfortunate, but it does look to be as though we have found a new weapon. We're going to equip this for some bonus health regeneration and hope that we get an offhand sometime soon. The damage on this is much better now. It seems though that this Shadow Rend is a little bit of delayed damage, which I'm not exactly the largest fan of in games. Unless it's damage over time effects, and those can be very fun and satisfying to play with. It's very anime-esque how we leave the shadow behind and then it does a charged weapon draw in order to slay the opponents. Soon we will have access to Dash, and Dash will be our primary mobility ability for the remainder of this game. Until, of course, we are in the end game. I genuinely do forget what the maximum level in Last Epoch is. If I remember correctly, it is level 100, but we'll be swapping to our build around the end of the campaign, which, if memory serves me correct, is around level 70. Possibly before then. There are other more relaxed builds that I could have played as well. Things less reliant on fragile defenses like dodge and whatever other mitigation we happen upon that isn't just not being hit by the opposing enemy's attacks. But where's the fun in that? What is life without a little bit of risk? Recently, I gave up drinking as a whole. I've cut alcohol out of my life and poured all but a single bottle of wine that I use for cooking down the drain. And the past few days, I've been heavily dealing with the pressure of just life in general. I suppose I shouldn't go into details, but things have not been the best on my end. And when you resort to substances to help you deal with your problems, it's a pretty dangerous path. And alcohol, like any other thing, is a substance. I had too much to drink, and one would say far too much to drink. And I think I understand now why it's so easy to rely on things like that. It definitely helps to numb the pain. But such is life. So, we are continuing on another skill point into Swift Assassin for some bonus attack speed. And now, another skill point into Intensity. Now that we have 3 in that, that is the end of where we will be spending skill points in that small portion of the tree. Our next specialization will be going into Dash. As for now, it is our only excuse me. As for now, it is our only mobility ability. And mobility in action RPGs is, in my opinion at least, a layer of defense. If you're not in the way to be hit by things, then you don't have to worry about how much health or defense or resistance you have, because you are avoiding the hit altogether. And that is a bit of a simplistic way to look at it, yes. But also in a way, there's a very large truth to it. An old friend of mine used to say, just don't stand in bad, and that is a very true phrase. So puncture has a chance to bleed whenever we strike a target. It's our move we use whenever we don't have enough mana for our Shadow Rend. So, Balthus is the keeper of the shard. You can see it glowing ever so vibrantly on his waist. A shard of the epoch. An artifact that essentially can control time and space if harnessed correctly. And so, being the guardian of such a powerful and dangerous artifact, most likely Balthus is in danger constantly. Think of it as Goku with a Dragon Ball as a young child. Luckily, Bulma stumbled upon him first, but I always imagine what would have happened if a member of the Red Ribbon Army knew about the Dragon Balls prior and went searching for Goku. It's funny, there's so many of those channels on YouTube that make the what if, blank thing happened in an anime, but I don't think I've ever seen that angle covered before. Most of them focus on Dragon Ball Super or later stages of Dragon Ball. And not to say that I watch them, but I have voiced them as a storyteller. And personally, I'm not the biggest fan of covering that kind of content. But also, it is sometimes interesting. It's like reading fan fiction that somebody has kind of poured their heart out into. So we have leveled up yet again, and one more point will be going into our attack speed and dexterity. Sorry, physical damage. I don't know why I kept saying dexterity. But now we have access to yet another defensive tool in our arsenal, that being the smoke bomb. It is a costly and long cooldown, but it is a wonderful defensive tool. It blinds enemies, which means they have a much less or much lower likelihood of being able to hit us should we be attacked. I love the waypoint animation in this game. It's such a cool, ethereal looking piece of work. So, we have dash, we have puncture, and now we have smoke bomb. So our Balthus has just been kidnapped, and back to camp we go. We could town portal, but why do that when there's a perfectly good waypoint right here? And thinking on that, I think that is what I will call this channel. Waypoint. It's simple, it's sweet, and it's a rest stop for those who need sleep, which I think is perfect. Are we able to? Is this two-handed? It is. We shall throw on a spear, as well as a rare amulet we have. This increases cast speed, so if the shop has something else for us to buy, most likely I will pick it up. So let's go ahead and sell off what we don't need, which is basically everything in our inventory. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing an amulet for us to equip. That's okay though. Alrighty. Well, oh well. We'll stick with the one we have for now. With the two-handed spear, we will be doing a little bit more DPS than with a one-handed sword and shield. But our squishiness will also go up. Now we'll be putting some points into guile. Hold on. I did not mean to click that many times into guile. One of the very nice things is that this game allows for respeccing incredibly easily, which I will always be a fan of. So now we have some less damage taken while moving, as well as some increased dodge chance. As ARPGs kind of have evolved over the years to have more mobility in general for the character, and universal mechanics such as dodging in a direction, I genuinely do think that taking inspiration from Dark Souls and the like to have the game be more interactive can be beneficial. But for a game like Path of Exile 2 that had stated that that is what they wanted to do, and when the game came out into early access, and there was much pushback from the community, it's tough to say whether the vision that they have for Path of Exile 2 is what the community wants, which there's always going to be some kind of contrast between the developer's vision for a game and what the players think that they'll enjoy. Personally, I like a bit of the slower pace that Path of Exile 2 has been attempting to convey. There's a lot of enemies in the game that currently don't feel very interactive, but there are some that do. And genuinely, in those moments where you get the setup and the payoff of the skills right, especially during Act 1 before you have your one-button build up and going, I think the game shines. And later on in Act 3, you had a massive lull again. I personally can't even describe what's so bad about Act 3. Just as a whole, that is where the game slows down so very much. And then the openness of Act 4 and the ability to take that by your leisure is pretty amazing. So this is new, introducing the Forge to the player at a much earlier juncture is very, very nice. Oh, is it going to force me to craft? Ah, it is. Okay. That explains glyphs. Interesting. And now we have a ring with movement speed and health on it. We can add a new prefix to it, but we only have ones for spell damage, so I will avoid doing that for now. It's pretty great that they added a small, mandatory crafting experience, or crafting tutorial to the game. I think that was something that was very much needed. If you're coming from Diablo and, well, any other more simplistic RPG that is more based off of only finding the gear and not crafting it, then Last Epoch and Path of Exile, both 1 and 2, can be very daunting to take on. Path of Exile is, let's just say, not good at teaching a new player what and what not to do with their currency. It is unfortunately the kind of game that one has to watch a 7-hour video on in order to understand how to get into the game, let alone be proficient at crafting or any of the end game mechanics. Path of Exile 1 has so many systems in it that for a newcomer, it genuinely is beyond overwhelming. Which is why I love to see new ARPGs hit the market. When Last Epoch came out, and to a lesser extent Path of Exile 2, because it's another GGG game, genuinely it was a bit of a breath of fresh air for me. because I had been such a massive Path of Exile 1 fanboy that it's hard to take on the outside perspective of someone who hasn't put thousands of hours into that game. There are so many things that after you've used them and interacted with them for years and years seem intuitive that plain and simply are not. And while PoE doesn't do much to explain to the player, if anything at that matter, about what they have at their disposal, and oh, I forgot that this game does not pause when we are doing things. That's alright. If you took a new player and you tried to explain crafting to them, I would argue that they would disengage with the conversation very, very early on, as would many people. It's simply not an interesting enough topic to warrant the amount of time investment for many people, which is why we see such a massive amount of people playing Trade League as opposed to solo self-found or any of the other game modes available in Path of Exile 1 and Path of Exile 2. And don't get me wrong, I love the crafting systems in PoE 1. I think they are amazing. The amount of versatility and ways you can go about creating such unique and powerful items in the game is amazing. But to an outsider who's just starting the game for the very first time, you have to imagine the Sisyphusian struggle that they must be facing to learn this continual knowledge gap and try to bridge it. They're working off of years and years of systems that have been developed and layered off of one another. So having a game like Last Epoch that presents itself as a less complicated but still in-depth version of the system that Path of Exile has tried to perfect is a wonderful task to undertake. I do think, though, that it is a shame that they are having to resort to different monetary actions. Personally, I find a lot of the cosmetic options available for purchase in Last Epoch to be underwhelming, to say the least. When the game came out, I purchased a supporter pack to hope that it, would support the game. But even the cosmetics I received from that aren't exactly up to my standard for things I would want to invest money on. But such is life. I think the visual styling of Last Epoch shines the most not in its character or armor designs, but in the environments they present to the player. I hope in the future that they're willing to look into why their cosmetics aren't exactly performing well, and understand that simply adding more or adding classes for people to purchase is not a good long-term solution. We're going to go ahead and invest in heavy shadows to increase the damage but lower the attack speed of our shadows, as well as get velocity for our dash, so it's more efficient mana-wise, and it has a lower cooldown. So here, Balthus attempts to use the shard to open a portal in the ritual to, well, essentially send us to the future. And with this, he uses the epoch to open a portal, and it sends us to the crumbling ruins in the ruined era, far into the future. Last Epoch is a story of repairing timelines. That is basically what the entirety of the end game resolves around. And with the Guardian gone, with us having no idea what happened to him, we take a shard of the Epoch and move on. Again, I think this game's strongest point is its area designs. The zones in this game are very unique visually and very memorable in terms of their color palette and the bright usage of these colors to really leave an impact on the player. I think the sound design in this game is wonderful as well, but seeing as this is a video to have you fall asleep to, I don't exactly want to turn the volume up too high. So, we speak to a general and are headed to a sanctuary. We're hopefully going to find where, and more importantly, when we are, even though this information is presented to the player right away. 1290 AG, which I assume is supposed to be after something. I'm not exactly sure what the G stands for, nor have I ever really attempted to think about that. So, if you've made it this far and you are a fan of Last Epoch, I'd love to hear what you think the AG stands for in the years. There are a lot of people that don't exactly play these games for their story, and I can't say I blame them. ARPGs are notorious for having less than impactful stories. Diablo is one of the very few and standout exceptions. Grim Dawn, as well, I would argue, is another one that has some excellent story qualities to it, as well as Titan Quest, and the newer Titan Quest 2 that is still in early access. Those games have a wonderful class system where you can mix and match abilities from multiple classes to create a very unique feeling customized option for you to toy around with and optimize. Though I have to say, I think, and it's probably because it is a fully released game, the systems of Grim Dawn are better than those of that in Titan Quest at the moment. So we are gathering different people around here to attempt to get them to evacuate and make it out of here alive. I really adore the Void aesthetic, and a lot of the enemy designs in this game for the Void are grotesque enough to be monstrous, but not to the horrific point that Path of Exile takes. They're not entirely horrific. There are some that do stretch into those lands, but those are few and far between, and mostly reserved to boss fights, which I think sets a very good tonal contrast for the standard enemies in this game. Yes, we're fighting horrors, but not ones that are that bad until we find the ones that are that bad. Recently, I contacted one of the old writers I used to work with. They helped us create a channel called Annie Recaps here on YouTube. A channel dedicated to covering anime in a concise and summaristic nature, to allow people to watch a video and decide if something was worth their time to watch. Albeit our videos had many a spoiler in them, but they never exactly... I want to say that they were almost a preview for an anime, to present the story concepts in them and the general feel of the show so that people can use their precious time in a way that they want. Silly me, I've been forgetting to use my dash to traverse around. So here's Grund, and I think that is the last of the people that we have to help evacuate. I do adore the way the forge system in this game works. The fact that we are able to craft on an item wherever we are in the world and have access to our currency at the same time really streamlines the leveling process, and the ability to understand if you die to a specific element or a poison or anything along those lines, you can alter your gear right there and then, if, of course, said gear has spots for you to do that. And then, I think the player agency in terms of being able to make your character stronger when you need to make them stronger is wonderful. And I think there is a charm in the opposite of that, wherein games like Path of Exile and Diablo, specifically Diablo 4, or Diablo 2 does it as well, to a lesser extent Diablo 3, where you had the cube in Diablo 2 with such a myriad of possibilities with the rune systems and to create some truly fantastical items in that game. Diablo 4 has the masterworking system and the the imprinting system, where you can change the unique effects of items in town. Although I do feel as though that is a little convoluted. Convoluted is the wrong word here. I feel as though it's a little superfluous that you have to go to town to change the unique affix on an item. The only reason I say that is because every time you get an item upgrade, say you have a better weapon or a better piece of armor, but the piece of armor that it's replacing has a quintessential augment on it, it feels like the game is forcing you to go back to town, click a menu twice, and then go back out and resume what you were doing. And while frequent town trips are almost a necessity in Diablo 4, simply because of the vast quantities of items that drop in that game, and the lack of a loot filter, the difference between that and Path of Exile, I think, is the almost personal feeling that a hideout has. Personally, I love browsing through the community-made hideouts and finding one that I adore and that I love and making it my own with some small tweaks and changes, rearranging some stuff to be the way I usually like it. But beyond that, the existence of a hideout in Path of Exile is genuinely such a wonderful concept. A game that does something similar that I also thoroughly enjoy is V Rising. It's taken this whole ARPG or action RPG formula and created a base building survival game around this gameplay loop of getting new abilities, growing stronger, finding gear upgrades, and having options to new abilities based off of those weapons, and different archetypes that form around them, whether it's through the passive powers in the late game, through the, I want to say, Sanguine Blood system. but it's a pretty cool game, especially if you've got a couple of friends to play it along with. Albeit, it's a very large time investment if you're not willing to change some settings around. But if you are playing on a live server or want to host your own server, the game can be very rewarding to play with a couple of good, meaning friends. People who have the time to dedicate to something like that. Recently, I haven't had a whole lot of people to actually play games with, and the longer I've sat at my computer working, trying to figure out what I want to do when I'm done with work, the more I've simply wanted to share in my experience with other people. And seeing as most of my friends nowadays are busy, I thought maybe we could come here onto YouTube and share this with you in the most quiet and relaxing way possible. Now, I'm by no means a pessimist or anything along those lines, but for the past year, I have lost a lot of faith in any forms of online relationships. I wonder what this is. Void fused bat. Interesting. Oh, this is painful. Very painful. These enemies hurt quite a bit. I wonder what happens if I leave this circle. Omen of Solitude. See, this is the kind of stuff that I genuinely enjoy in an RPG. It's got interactive abilities for me to dodge. This is just a random encounter out in the world while I'm going through the campaign. And we got some pretty good items. So let's check. We have idols now that I did forget to equip, but that's okay. So let's see. Chronicle of the Damned, Offhand Catalyst. Well, we won't be equipping that. This is a Sentinel body armor. We won't be equipping that either. Here is another pike that we could pick up. So it is corrupted. It has a plus 80% chance to inflict bleed on hit. I think that is a pretty large upgrade for us, as well as a yellow body armor, a couple of other swords, and I think that is everything we will pick up from here. But that is an awesome corruption, because now we have some melee leech as well. And it also means that our puncture will apply bleed much more often. But it also means that our Shadow Rend will apply bleed too. Here we have Gilgamesh the Corrupt. I love the variety of names people always seem to come up with for ARPGs. They're very amusing. Gilgamesh is just one of those fantasy names you hear everywhere. And if I remember correctly, the first Gilgamesh I remember in a video game was that of Final Fantasy I. Oh man, I feel old just saying that, but we have a small guide here for set items. It's just going to explain that if we equip multiple items that have a set bonus, that they will activate said set bonus. But that's a pretty self-explanatory thing. So here we are, almost at another boss fight. This is the Penion's Study. If I remember correctly, this is the boss fight that has 3 people right next to each other. But we're going to go ahead and travel back really quick and sell and manage our inventory. I'll probably toss a bunch of the items that we have in the stash. Taking a nice big sip of tea there really quick. So we get another passive point, some guaranteed legendary gloves, which are actually somewhat decent. They give elemental damage leached as health, percent increased leech rate, and 13% to all of our resistances. Or elemental resistances, I should clarify. Because there is void damage as well as poison damage that are separate from that. But for now, I think we'll simply sell the majority of what we have gotten. This is a much better ring. Interesting. And we will buy some runes of fracturing. They're a little expensive, but anytime we pick up an item that has an affix we might want to use on it, we can shatter it into its parts and use them later for the same crafting purposes, to put those affixes on another item that we happen to find. Okay. Time for a hopefully quick boss fight. If they stay grouped up, I imagine it would be pretty easy for us. But as always, they are spreading out, so it was expected. This boss fight can go incredibly quickly if you have a lot of area of effect damage right at the start of the fight. But they're slightly grouping up here. There's one down. Almost two. Pop our smoke bomb for a little bit more of that defensive. Although I'm unsure if area of effects like that lightning can actually miss us. But that's okay. And the last student goes down. Some good gold, some blue items, and let's go ahead and portal back to the council chambers. A small reminder that if you are enjoying this content, there will be more to come. So I realize that a 3-hour video or a single 3-hour video to fall asleep to might not be enough for any of you. But don't worry, there will be more to come. And now we have our ballista. We have access to the skill that we will be eventually using to clear screens and screens and screens. But for now, we will not be utilizing it. It's a little rough to make use of early on, as unfortunate as that is, but we'll also soon be picking our specialization, and I think we're going to be going Falconer early on here. My friend launching Eugenics. If you like any kind of tile-based game, Eugenics is wonderful. My body is doing a thing. I apologize. But Eugenics is great. It has such a funny soundtrack, and Edmund McMullen understood that it might not be the best game in the world, but to him, it is his magnum opus. There's so much comedy and messed up humor in that game. It is such a treat to play. Ah, interesting. So this is Warpath. It's the ability that I was thinking about doing our playthrough on. And who knows, if we get to the end of this run and I don't happen to enjoy our ballista build that we'll have going on, then we'll reroll as a Warpath boy. Just spinning and spinning and spinning. And I suppose I can just use the time that we're spinning to talk about my day and the jobs I've been doing for work and any other life advice that I've picked up in my long, long, long time here on this planet Earth. I'll give you a guess as to whether that was ironic or not. Okay, so I keep forgetting to use my ability to jump around. But here we are, the Idol of Loathing. Another small boss fight for us. And we are about to be able to swap to a different ability instead of using Shadowrend. I'm pretty sure that once we unlock the next skill, that is what we'll be using for the remainder of our leveling process. There might be another swap later on, now that I am thinking of it. I'm unsure. When you unlock Bladestorm at 10 points in the Rogue passive tree, switch to the Early Setup tab. At 10 points in the passive tree, respec and replace the action bar Shadowrend to Bladestorm. Well, it is just like me to not read, and that's okay. So we're going to put Bladestorm in here and immediately go to the right here. So we're putting 1 point in Heavy Weapon for 8% bonus damage, 1 point in Tempered Shell, and then subsequently 4 points in Nightblade. And on our bar, we'll go ahead and swap it over to Bladestorm. So what's cool about this move is that, for one, we can have multiple of them spinning at the same time, but two, we can also DPS while the blades are out. If I remember correctly, I think we can have 3, yes. So 3 blade storms at once. This damage is phenomenal for how early this is. That is amazing. I can see why this is such a strong leveling option. I do wonder if it'll fall off, but I highly doubt it will. But we're going to be swapping to Umbral Blades at level 20 in the Rogue's tree. I don't exactly remember what Umbral Blades does. You know, there is a saying that in gaming, players will optimize the fun out of your game. And nowhere, I think, is that more apparent than games like this, where you can crunch the numbers and be incredibly efficient with how you play. Although in the case of action RPGs, like Path of Exile and Last Epoch, I would argue that, you know, in the case of Path of Exile, Path of Building being essentially its own game is almost by design part of the experience. There's just so much information for Path of Exile 1 that it almost needs those external tools to not be functional, but to allow for the experimentation that the game provides. There's just inherently too much, at least in my opinion, to keep track of when it comes to Path of Exile's numerous mechanics, whether it's farming strategies or anything along those lines. There's just so much in that game. I wonder how many people agree that Last Epoch struck a really good balance between the complexity of Path of Exile and the approachability of Diablo. There have been many games that have tried to do that, and many ARPGs that have come out over the years. Although I do want to say, this genre somewhat feels like a dying breed. I mean, thinking about the action RPGs we've had released over the past years, Path of Exile 2, Diablo 4, two of the biggest names in this genre have released sequels to their games. And Path of Exiles was supposed to be a reimagining of PoE 1. Diablo 4 is, let's be honest here, and I'm sorry if I get hate for this, but it's the slop of ARPGs. It's designed for people who don't have nearly as much time to invest in an ARPG, but still want that outlet and that feeling of progression that genuinely no other game genre gives to the player. I would argue there are some hack and slash games that do. The old, not old, even Devil May Cry 5 does a great job of building up your player power as Dante and Nero throughout the game. I'm not going to talk about V. V doesn't exist. But for a lot of people, you know, Diablo 4 just isn't deep enough build-wise. There are very few not cookie-cutter builds for you to mess around with. And the interactions in that game simply aren't that deep. And while, yes, it is great for what it provides to the community, for the parents out there who want to game still, but just don't have the time to play PoE, I am happy for them to have an option. Do I think that it could be better? Absolutely. There are so many pain points that Diablo 4 could improve upon, but I am still happy for them that the option exists for a game that they can enjoy and live out the power fantasy that ARPGs provide. So this is the husk of Elder Penion. Penion? I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, to be fair. For our DPS rotation, we're placing 3 Umbral Blades down and then using Puncture to help build up as much bleed as we can on the target. We do have another upgrade for our Umbral Blades, but we are also about to be swapping to a new ability soon. And with that, that is another shard of the Epoch placed into our hands. Let's go ahead and spend our specialization points into Nightblade and then into Momentum. And then after Momentum, we'll go ahead and get Swift Recovery, which will give us mana every time we use the dash. So, here we are at the end of time. This is where you'll spend a lot of your end game if you are doing monolith content, which for the most part is what I've done in the late game in Last Epoch. But I think we're going to be picking the Falconer, if I remember correctly. Yep, after level 20, we go right into the Falconer. Let me just double check. Okay, and now we have unlocked Falconry, which I will place onto our bar. And with that, our ascendancy has been chosen. And if I remember correctly, we still use Falconer for our ballista build, so that is perfect. And Falconry gives us a passive falcon to fight with us. That is a minion, that is a companion, scaling with dexterity to claw out the eyes of whatever poor souls are nearby. So the void corrupted their leader, and we will now find the last shard of the epoch. Okay, let's see here. Where do we want to put our points? Twin Blade. So this allows us to dual wield and also gives us umbral blades. So now we'll be looking for a main and offhand weapon to be using. And we can actually go through our weapons currently and see if we have any that I would like to use. Increased melee damage, increased physical damage. Let's see here. I'm going to go ahead and check the shop as well to see if we have anything that I'd want to equip. Increased physical damage, increased damage over time. Yeah, we'll nab this. Put this in our offhand and a dagger in our main hand. Increased melee damage. So we'll actually sell off some stuff. Sorry for the quiet lull. And we do have a unique shield as well. Intelligence, cold damage, physical resistance, strength. Chance to find potions. One thing that is very nice in this game is that you don't have to buy stash tabs. I think that's something that's very admirable by them, but also might be a reason that they don't have the revenue that they need. And now we are going to despecialize that skill that we just had on and move on to the Umbral Blades skill. Oh, actually, I am silly. We do not despecialize in this. Silly me. That's okay. We'll get those levels back nice and quick anyway. So at level 20, we unlock our last specialization, and that will be going toward the, or not last, but the next specialization, and that will be going toward Umbral Blades. I'm going to go ahead and put Blade Storm there. We're going to put Umbral Blade there. Dash on Q, Shift, and go with that. Do we have the decoy? We do not. So, dispelling the barrier, we are heading into the sheltered wood to find the last shard of the epoch. And now, as well, we'll begin putting points into our... Interesting. Putting points into our falconry tree when we level. We're currently level 15, so we're a little bit away from being able to put some points into put some points into the Umbral Blades, but that's alright. If I remember correctly, because I just looked at this. Once we have 30 points into the falconry tree, we'll be swapping the falconry, or swapping Umbra Blades out for Aerial Dive, which does a lot of single target damage. I think we're just using Umbral Blades on single target, but that might be wrong. So Umbral Blades is a 3-part spell. We throw knives out and then we call them back to us. I've never really messed with this one, to be honest. It looks very interesting. Reminds me of Xayah from League of Legends, where she throws out feather daggers as a Vestian and recalls them back to her to damage and root enemies. A very unique mechanic that I've seen used in many games since I've seen it in League of Legends. Although I'm not sure what came first. And so, we've made it to the ruined surface. And we have another point to spend in Shift. The mana restoration of it would be very, very nice. But this is a pretty long zone, if I remember right. We'll grab this shrine. We're going to use our dash to get through this zone, or this next zone, as quickly as we can. We are slightly below the recommended level of this area too, so maybe we will not be skipping a lot of enemies. I do almost want to see what this area consists of enemy-wise. It does feel as though we are getting stronger and stronger, which is great. But this is still a little spooky in terms of the sheer number of enemies that we have. And this Omen of Solitude is broken out of its husk and is vulnerable now. Hooray. Nice. And that gives us some corrupted runes and corrupted items. And I think I saw a knife in there, so let's see if it's good. Melee cold damage, health on hit, critical strike multiplier. That is pretty awesome. How about you? Minion spell damage. Interesting. Two-handed sword. Two-handed sword. I think we'll stick with the cleaver. 20% increased melee damage. And this is 30% increased physical. I think actually we want to stick with the physical damage. There. But we did get a better dagger. Mr. Void, Prophet of Rage. I do find myself often being very underleveled in this game in terms of the area level and my character's level. Though genuinely, it doesn't seem as though that actually impacts my lethality at all, so that's good. Starting off here, we put our first point into Raptor's Wings. Which gives us a chance to gain haste whenever our falcon deals damage. Which is a little strange to me, as we don't have the falcon on our bar. I don't think I have touched on it, but I do find the fact that you go into the negatives on your mana bar, you go into mana debt, essentially, to be a very fun balancing tool for not having the mana pool to cast something, but still being able to cast it. I find that very intriguing. A fun little mini boss. I do like a lot of the augments that rare enemies have in this game. They do feel very unique and distinct whenever you come across one that you haven't seen in a while or have never seen before, as that whirlwind was, or sorry, whirlpool was in my case. So our minimum skill level has been upgraded to 4, so the next time I make a mistake and unspecialize a skill, it won't be as impactful towards my progression. But such is life. You learn from mistakes and move on. We are struggling slightly with mana sustain. I do wonder at what point we'll be able to fix that, but and once again, the vibrant purples of like the corruption and void in this game are so pretty to look at. Right now we are making our way to a surface city that has somehow stayed alive throughout all of this, which I can't even imagine trying to live through any of this without some kind of divine intervention. But maybe that's just me. I would definitely be one of these zombie guys just running around mindlessly absorbed by the void. Oh, these poor town guards doing their best, trying their hardest to keep the corruption at bay. And now we have another skill point. We're just going to be putting all 5 skill points into our falcon right away. And I think that's it for now. Okay. Let's go ahead and sell some items. Minion health isn't very helpful to us. Cast speed also not very helpful to us. I want to say we're getting rather unlucky with our items. I've been seeing a lot of modifiers for minions. But of course we are not using minions. Okay. Bladestorm is pretty easy in terms of being able to throw a few out and call it a day. The damage they deal is pretty insane. That's a lot of damage that we just took. Level 18, another point into falconry for bonus damage whenever we are hasted. And I wonder if it looks like we gain haste whenever Umbral Blades is dealing damage, which makes sense then why we're taking what we're taking. So that essentially means as soon as Umbral Blades begins to damage enemies, Bladestorm begins to damage enemies, our damage goes up, which is a fun little interaction. The thing I wish that we did have in this game, I wish there were more ways to augment the abilities in unique ways. I think the lack of a support gem system or the linearity of the skill tree is somewhat limiting towards a player's want to augment an ability to do what they want. We only have the options the developers give us, whereas the support system in Path of Exile really allows the expression of the player for each and every skill. I genuinely think that if you asked somebody to create a build around a certain skill and then asked another person to do so, you would end up with two entirely different builds. Whereas in Last Epoch, it would essentially, most likely, feel and play nearly identically. And maybe that is a good thing. There's a consistency in what a player expects from a game like this. But at the same time, there is somewhat of a lack of creativity for the player to express their own desires and their own power fantasy that they want for their character. But that complexity that PoE has definitely comes at a massive cost. And that cost is the biggest flaw of the game, that being approachability. Getting into PoE 2 and being or trying to have friends play PoE 2 is a impossible task, to say the least. And that's not the best for a game that is attempting to garner new players. And I think that's the biggest motivation behind Path of Exile 2. Tea is such a wonderful substance. So relaxing. So many different flavors and herbal combinations that have come up over the years. It's such a nice mental remedy to calm down, relax, take a deep breath, have a hot cup of tea with some ginger and honey, and just enjoy an evening of playing games. Oh, we have a loot lizard. I haven't seen one of these yet. In this playthrough, I suppose I should say. I have, of course, seen one of these before, and they are loot explosions as always. Our inventory is full already. Critical strike chance, melee cold damage. I think we'll swap that. Ah, it's a one-handed sword. Well, we do want a dagger equipped to make use of one of our passives, so we'll leave those on the ground for now. And our loot lizard spawned yet even more loot lizards for us to chase and chase. My gosh. It is such a fun experience having these loot explosions in these games. Although, for the sake of time, I shan't look at everything. I am working, as it were. I think we get a good amount of haste, and thus damage whenever we're hitting things. Although, again, mana seems to be a problem. I'm not gonna hate on all these gold shrines we're getting, though. Somebody very, very dear and near to me is an arachnophobe, and they would despise this part of the game. Those creepy crawlies running at her from the shadows would definitely not be something that she enjoys looking at, let alone having to engage with. I do appreciate that games more recently have been doing arachnophobia mode, where you have the ability to turn all the spiders in World of Warcraft into boars and things along those lines. In terms of accessibility, that is a very nice touch. So we are back in the cultist camp with another full inventory ready to sell and make some more gold off of. We are almost level 20, which means we can start putting some skill points into Umbral Blades. But for now, there's not much we can do. Minion damage, minion damage. Boy, oh boy, this game wants me to play minions. Ah, this adds a skill point to shift. That's very nice. Melee fire damage, dexterity, vitality, health regeneration, and health. I would rather take the mana. We do seem to be struggling with our mana costs, so I'm not exactly going to say no to some bonus mana. Make our life just that bit easier. Alrighty. We are nearing the end of this second chapter, and I think I will attempt to make it to chapter 3 or 4. We'll see how ambitious I'm feeling this evening before we stop the video and I take my voice from your ears. Unless, of course, you have another one of these videos lined up to view for your own pleasure, in which case I don't blame you. Game companies do such a great job most of the time in creating these fascinating, deep worlds for people to explore. And one of my favorite ones of that, or one of my favorite worlds to explore, is none other than, of course, the world of Skyrim. I could sit here and talk about all of Tamriel all day long. Don't get me wrong. We do have our new specialization. So let's go ahead and pop Umbral Blades in there. And now we'll go ahead and put some points here. You now throw just one large umbral blade with each throw that deals significantly more damage and has an increased radius. And then Lethal Darkness. Umbral blades inflict a stack of Shadow Dagger on hit while using a dagger. And then Explosive Blades. Blades in the ground now arm after half a second, but can no longer be recalled. And Umbral Blades has less attack speed. If enemies walk over them, the blades will cause a shard explosion, a sub-skill dealing physical damage in an area. Blades expire and explode after 3 seconds if no enemies walk over them. So now we not only throw one giant blade, but they explode. Cool. And the mana cost is significantly lower as well. We're going to portal back to the cultist camp. And move on. So, we are here. Everybody else is gone, and we are heading to meet Maketh, the leader of the cultists. I suppose you could argue that the Act 2 ends when we get our ascendancy, or whatever this game wishes to call it, where we become our class, basically. And this could have been considered Act 3, but I consider this fight to be the end of Act 2. So let's test out this new Umbral Blade. We throw 3 of our Blade Storms and then throw Umbral Glaives at them, or words. You think that because I'm a voice actor, I would stumble over my words less over the years, but it is not true. Thank God we don't use film anymore for recording, because I would waste so much of it doing retakes. Okay, and so here we are. The next area and the next rift. This is a side quest to enter this time rift and kill, I think it's a dragon at the end of it. But this takes us back to the ancient forest and the ancient era, negative 6020 BE, where there are still these constructs of blue light floating in the air. I really want to do a deep dive into the lore of Last Epoch, because I'm sure there is some crazy stuff that I just don't know about this game and its gods and its power systems. But that'll have to wait. Maybe we'll do a whole research video going into the lore and depths of Last Epoch. Very similar to another channel I am a part of called Cyric, but let us slay a dragon. I'm not gonna lie, this is not my favorite artistic rendition of a dragon. Ouch. That's painful. Man. There we go. Sorry, I had to lock in for a second. Can't die multiple times to the same boss, now can I? How else am I going to prove my hardcore gamer skills? I forget what tangent I was on, I'm sorry. I know I was talking about Skyrim earlier. Right. So, on one of the other channels I work for, we cover video game facts and different elements of games. And one of the things that we covered recently was Dark Souls. I adore that series. That series is one of my favorites, if not my favorite. FromSoft in general has such a way with crafting these intricate worlds and beautiful lore, and oh man, I love it. But there's just nothing like delving into the plot lines that they've made for all of Lordran and the lands between for Elden Ring. I love how masterfully crafted their stories are. And of course, there are those who disagree, and I will say that you are correct. Sitting down while you're playing and reading through a bunch of item descriptions isn't exactly the most cohesive way to experience a story. You're not wrong there. But when those things start to click and you've read a fair bit, and you start to see the environmental storytelling that Dark Souls in particular excels at, there is nothing more immersive than exploring Anor Londo after you know that Guinevere has, or is, keeping up the illusion that everything is fine. Man, I could talk about Dark Souls all day, but this is a Last Epoch video, so we'll stop and save it for if I play through Dark Souls. I have to say, the Rogue is such a satisfying class to play, albeit not necessarily acting very roguish at the moment. The throwing daggers and having them explode, I suppose, is fairly roguish. But we picked the Falconer subclass and currently are not using our Falcon. And we won't be for a while, which is, needless to say, slightly unfortunate. But as I said, I'd rather be following a guide than sitting here attempting to theorycraft a build and all of that while we are attempting to sleep. When I was a child, there was a lullaby my father and mother would sing to me every night before we go to bed. And unfortunately now my father has passed away. But my wife and I sing the exact same lullaby they sang me every night to each other. Maybe one day we'll end a video with that or something. It is, I suppose, somewhat childish to still sing a lullaby as an adult, but it's one of the few ways I still feel I can stay connected to my dad every day. He might be gone, but so much of what he taught me throughout my life guides me every single day. And I can only imagine that in some way or another, keeping that memory of him alive every day, just, I hope somewhere out there he can feel it, you know. I'm not a very spiritual or religious person by any means whatsoever. But there's no definitive proof of anything. after death, then there's no definitive proof that there isn't something after death. I just hope that if there is, that my dad is somewhere out there looking down on me and knowing I might be struggling, but I'm getting by, you know? Not all of us can be big and famous and make it, you know, quote unquote, but the more important thing for me is I'm happy in what I do and I can provide for my family. And that's all I care about, is being able to find joy in what I do and joy in what I bring to others. And if that's a small YouTube channel with no views, but one person watching this and falling asleep to it, then by all means, I'm more than happy to be your little bedtime story reader or bedtime rambler. However you want to view me. One of the things I think I'm most thankful for streaming is the ability to talk continually and just kind of speak my mind, whether it's talking about the gameplay that we're doing, where we just fought a boss and again are still having very, very strong mana struggles with this build. But that's okay. We'll figure it out eventually, I suppose. We're going Edge of Obscurity. And in our Umbral Blade tree, we are then putting 2 points into Efficient Manufacturing, which reduces the mana cost and increases the duration of our spinning blades, as well as we have some actual skill points to put in, which we're putting into Wilderness Scout. Ah, we put 8 points into that. Okay, nice and simple. I keep forgetting to use my decoy and all of that, but decoy is such an expensive skill. I suppose it's only there for us if we truly are in danger and we need a get out of jail card. You know what? We'll fight a nemesis. We'll empower it, and we'll do the thing. I think the nemesis system in this game is very cool. You can sort of see whether you want to invest in trying to get certain items from this enemy that gets more powerful every time you fight them. Oh, speaking of the nemesis system, the patent that Warner Brothers had, I forget if it was Warner Brothers, whoever the publishers of Shadow of Mordor are, the patent on their nemesis system has since expired. And so now, hopefully, we'll see that system pop up in more games. And in case you didn't know what that nemesis system was, they created this incredibly deep and immersive system in Shadow of War Mordor that has the player fighting these generals. And throughout the game, depending on how you achieve victory against them, and if you let them live with the shame of having been defeated, they'll come back stronger with vengeance and better tools to fight the strategies that you used to defeat them. And of course, you can keep doing this and shaming them and marking them and essentially degrading them or empowering them to the point of it's just such a cool system. I love it. It's a very, very fun system to play with. And you get some pretty memorable moments. It makes every playthrough unique. It makes your player decisions matter. Before we progress, we have a couple of points to spend. So for our Umbral Blade, we are going on to putting a point in the Umbral Remnant, my bad. So shadows drop Umbral Blades now. And then in our Blade Storm, we are putting another point into efficient manufacturing to lower our mana cost and increase the duration of our spinning blades. Of course, a longer duration means that per mana, it's a more efficient skill to use. Hence the name, efficient manufacturing, I must imagine. Okay, and with this, we are now at the almost end of this area. We need to find both of the missing parts of the bridge, and then go down, explore the last area, and fight one more boss for the final piece of the epoch, allowing us to travel back to the point of calamity and try to figure out what sent so much void and corruption into this world. Aha, I seem to have gone the wrong way. Less damage taken from distant enemies. That's something I wish Path of Exile 2 would do. There are two modifications to enemies that I despise in that game: proximal tangibility and a temporal bubble. Both punish the opposite style of opposite play styles to what they do. Temporal bubble means that if you are close to the enemy, your action speed is slowed immensely. And that means your attack speed, your cast speed, your movement speed, every action you take is slowed by what feels to be 40-50%, which is massive. But for a melee character, your skills for the most part are already pretty slow. I'm looking at you, Mace. And genuinely, the other melee stuff, like the Monk's Ice Strike and so on and so forth, don't have nearly as big of a detriment when faced with temporal bubble. But maces seem to just be the laughingstock of GGG, it seems. I can only hope that when swords are added and daggers and the flail, that they feel better than the mace does, because there is still some major issues with that weapon archetype. Regardless, where was I? What was I talking about? Oh, right. The next one that I hate is proximal tangibility. Proximal tangibility is something that punishes you for not being melee, although not really. It's supposed to be the other end of the spectrum, where instead of temporal bubble, which punishes you for being close to an enemy, proximal tangibility punishes you from being far away from an enemy. And the reason it's not as punishing is spells in Path of Exile 2, at least, spells and ranged attacks, are very, very strong, to say the least. Oh, do you only need to do one of these now? That is so nice. You used to have to do both sides and then go down, but now I suppose it's only one. That is quite convenient. So most of the time you end up with this situation where there's a mob that has proximal tangibility. You get frustrated that you can't kill it from afar, and so you have to walk over to it and then one-shot it anyway. it more of just wastes time. And so while it's supposed to be the counterpart to the positioning nightmare that is proximal tangibility, temporal bubble, it just ends up becoming a nuisance of a mechanic. And then to melee characters, it literally does not matter. So it's a little bit of a confusing design choice. I hope that gets changed. I hope that proximal tangibility gets looked at, same with temporal bubble, because they both feel very unhealthy to play around in the game. Alrighty, so here we are at the Emperor's Remains. And our damage is looking pretty good. This boss fight is very, very cool to look at, but again, it's not exactly the most difficult thing in the world. Last Epoch isn't prided on its difficulty. The campaign is incredibly fun to level through, though, I will say. It's smooth, they got a lot of that down perfectly. And so we reach out and touch the shard. After eons alone, 3 again become 1. On the precipice of a broken world, there is hope. The epoch is reforged. As the traveler left, the real journey began. And so our epoch begins again. Sorry for the pun. Alrighty, let's go ahead, and this gives us ward. We don't need that. Bonus armor and dexterity is wonderful. These gloves are 8 armor. Still worse than our current ones. We're not going to use this shield. Throwing damage might actually be genuinely helpful. We'll grab that. Dodge rating. Chance to shred armor on hit. Interesting. We do a fair bit of physical damage, and that also gives us some void resistance. Uh-huh. 10% increased cast speed doesn't exactly help us. We like attack speed. 71% chance to ignite on melee hit, 62% increased fire damage over time, plus 14 melee fire damage. Flame Reeve hits enemies in an exploding circle around you, and plus 8 to Flame Reeve mana cost. I genuinely think that even without the Flame Reeve stuff, that is something that will be better than our current setup. This gives us increased damage over time. This is increased chance to ignite on hit. Ooh, actually, this is also increased chance to ignite on hit, and it's better. Alright, with that, our inventory is clean again. We are heading toward leave a shadow in the place that we shift from. And for Umbral Blades, now we are heading toward this. The shard explosion deals damage in a larger area. and deals more damage per second. The blade has remained on the ground, both multiplicative with other modifiers. So, now we're going to go talk to the wise man that aided in our evolution to, well, in this case, a falconer who doesn't use their falcon yet. And so we head to the outcast camp in the Imperial era, hoping to find the source and cause of this future collapse of the world. We stood at the precipice of the collapse of time itself and found ourselves unable to re-sew together the threads of time. The epoch guided us again to the lands between at the end of time. And now we are here, aiding an imperial effort to claim a land. I really think that the strongest part of this game is its area design. Although I will also say that a big issue I have with this game is the story. All of the areas in Last Epoch's story don't change. They all stay the same no matter how many times you've played through the game or anything along those lines. Although they do have other options for leveling alternate characters, which is very, very nice. Something I wish Path of Exile would do. A campaign skip would be understandable in that game because the campaign in Path of Exile 2 is so long. Rerolling a new character in that game is a very big slog. And personally, I don't think there's enough experimentation to keep one character for a full league. But maybe that's just me. Following a build guide and optimizing one singular character for an entire PoE2 league sounds like not a very fun time, because then I would still be playing the Walking Calamity Bear, and while that was fun and entertaining to stomp around as a big old angry brown bear with meteors raining down everywhere, it did get a little old. And that's okay. Some gameplay styles can get stale, and that's fine. That's why people move on and wait for a new season. I just genuinely hope that the next rework of the endgame for PoE2 is worth the wait. We've had no news from GGG for a while now, and everyone really is starting to wonder, you know? So I said I was old earlier, and if you have made it this far without falling asleep, I suppose this is more of a personal conversation with the one person who hasn't yet succumbed to their cold side of the pillow. I am 28, going on 29. I was born in 1997. And I know, you're thinking, oh, he's a boomer. Don't worry, I can 6'7" with the best of them, I promise. Now, because of my job, I am terminally online, so I promise that memes are very relevant in my life. I am an avid user of TikTok, even though I probably shouldn't be. It's not good for my brain, but you know, nothing is these days anyway. and that's alright. There's something that stuck with me a very long time ago. I listened a lot to voice actors, watching them perform, and one thing I have learned is when somebody is smiling when they're talking, even into a microphone, it's usually fully audible in how they talk and how, certain words come out of their mouth. There's a certain stiffness that happens with your lips that makes certain syllables more or less articulate. And the expression of that in your voice work and the ability to have that come out in character work and anything along those lines is, I feel, incredibly important to give a believable performance. So I adore and idolize a lot of people that are able to do that. There are certain people that are great voice actors simply because of the qualities of their voice. Steve Bloom is an excellent example of that. He has such a sultry and gravelly and, that deep, wonderful wonderful quality to his voice. Chris Sabat, oh my gosh, Chris Sabat is such a great voice actor. His performances as Piccolo, Vegeta, Zoro, all of them, even though a lot of them sound somewhat similar. The qualities he brings out in his voice for all of the characters that he does, oh my gosh, him as All Might. There's not much I like about the English dub, but him as All Might has gotta be one of my favorite things about the English dub of My Hero. And don't get me wrong, I'm not a massive My Hero fan. I don't jive with the anime too much. I think if you talk to anybody who likes the show but isn't obsessed with the show, they'll most likely say it's because of the fandom. Just like people who got fully obsessed with Homestuck and Undertale and all that. Those were the big cringe fests when I was in high school. I suppose that shows my age. But over the years, there has been many different, examples of voice work that I have idolized. And most recently, and we will have to do a playthrough of it on this channel, is Claire Obscure Expedition 33. I was dumbfounded by so many of the vocal performances in that game. Whether it's, oh god, I don't even know where to start. I'll have to save it for us playing that. Maybe that'll be the next one we make on this channel. But oh my gosh, dude. What a masterpiece in sound design, in vocal performance, and just so many categories. If I do a playthrough of Claire Obscure on this channel, or Expedition 33, whatever you want to call the game, most likely I will do it as a challenge run. I've beaten that game multiple times, and there's just a lot of fun builds you can do throughout the game. So we'll do like a parry only or a gun only run. Honestly, I think the gun only one has the most potential, simply for the fact that there's so many different ways to build gun characters or ranged characters in Claire Obscure. And of course, we will be allowing parrying because, come on, I gotta flex my gaming skills, So here we're simply defending this woman as she charges this artifact up, and we have a pretty good build to do so. There's enemies coming down a bridge, and we have the perfect area denial tool to deal with them. I have to remember that my my blade storms last for a very long time. Nice. Simple as. We have another couple of skill points to spend and some more upgrades to our abilities. So let's go ahead and spend these really quick. Now we're going to put a point into Magnetic Grip, which is Blade Storm slowly seeks out enemies. And then in Shift, we are putting a point into the Velocity, increasing our mana efficiency of Shift. And then with our Umbral Blades, we are continuing to put points into the Burst of Agony. And like that, we will move on. Our Shift, no, it is not on our Shift, which is why I haven't been saying Shift, leaves behind a shadow. And the important thing about that is that we have our shadows also throw a dagger when we make them. So shifting forward and throwing our dagger technically throws 2, which is very nice. We also have the ability to stand in our smoke bomb and get some bonus damage when we do that. I'm actually having to kite these enemies. That's a rarity. Oh, look at that loot explosion. A lot of spicy items. And another little loot lizard. I love the loot lizards, they're adorable. Let's take a look at these daggers. Increased fire damage. More minion damage. And it really wants me to use minions. Cold damage, physical resistance. That sounds nice. One thing I have always struggled with in Last Epoch is understanding the different bases that we have access to. I feel as though Last Epoch does a bit of a poor job in making sure bases that aren't important to the player aren't dropped, if that makes sense. But maybe it's just my unfamiliarity with this game and the amount of items I've been shown over my years as a gamer. Who knows? But with another level comes more health and a dodge rating. The fact that our shift essentially gives us a free cast of Umbral Blades is very nice. I assume that'll actually up our DPS on bosses a fair amount. So once we have all 8 points put into the Wilderness Scout passive, which is our bonus HP, then we are going to put 8 more points into another skill. Oh, sorry, no, it's just 1. I'm a liar. Sorry about that. This is a fun one. I wish this is how this skill worked normally, but it is not, unfortunately. We have a mini boss here who applies poison on hit. And there we go. Simple as our damage is quite great, but our defenses definitely need some work. But that is usually how this game goes. We're not playing hardcore or anything, otherwise I'd be more worried about keeping our defenses in check and using the crafting system as we're going along. But for now, it's okay. We're not here to break any records with a campaign speedrun or anything. I'm just here to have fun and, like I said, lull you guys to sleep and be as comforting as I can. So, one of the perks of being a voice actor is being able to work from home. Although I am trying to not do that. So, if for whatever reason you are a studio who is looking for a voice actor and you guys have happened upon this, you can catch me live on Twitch and really contact me any way that you feel comfortable via whatever means you want. I should have all of my contact information on the channel. But one of the perks is definitely being able to work from home. And one of the perks my wife has is me being her own personal audiobook 90% of the time. Recently, I haven't been reading as much just because I've been stressed and she's been exhausted. But she does love me reading some of her favorite less than safe for work novels in bed. A certain Sarah J. Maas series. And genuinely, the more I've read them, the more I have enjoyed them. They are intriguing and very intricate and have a lot of really well-written characters. So, it does seem like our main single target damage comes from the Umbra Blades, which does make sense. They're delayed damage, we throw 2 of them with shift. And we are nearing the end of this little section of the game as well. Over here where I'm at, it is currently midnight. Well, 2 minutes from it. I hope your eyes are heavy and your breathing is even. And that in one way or another, this has helped you get a good night's sleep. The Imperial Dreadnought. So here we are on a boat full of ghosts and wraiths and all manner of haunting beings. It baffles me that this is the Imperial Dreadnought, and that the people in power have such ghastly abominations as their tools of enforcement. I do have to say, the nicest thing about speaking so slowly and clearly is the abundance of time I have to utilize my vernacular to put it in as convoluted of words as possible. I read a lot for work, and most of the time there are words that I have to look up to understand what they mean, because either I've never seen them before or I have, and my burnt out, 0 attention span ADHD brain doesn't remember them, which is probably more often than not the reasoning behind me having to look up how to pronounce certain words. But my English teacher's disappointment aside, man, I guess that's one thing I can touch on for the last little while here. Linguistics. I adore language, and I've used that word a lot today. I feel like admiration and adoration are very, very important in life. I think it's paramount to be able to appreciate things that inspire you. And language for me has always been one of those things. I love a lot of the languages I've learned over the years. I say a lot, but I've mainly just learned French and a little bit of Japanese. And I'm not talking, I'm a weeb who watches anime so I can speak Japanese. I lived there for 3 years when I was a child. And I think at a very early age, I really started to develop an appreciation for language as a whole. So that is another boss down. Not exactly the cleanest of kills, but we tanked our way through it with some health potions, and that's okay. So, to the Shining Cove we go. I'm not going to forget to spend my skill points really quick. Let's go ahead and fix our build to the point that we can. Oh, we do just slam 7 points into this. So this is increasing our throwing attack damage, which increases our Umbral Blade damage. And then here, we're going to get Burst of Agony. In Shift, we're going to keep putting points into the Shadow Step next. We are invulnerable while shifting, so it becomes a true dodge. And then next, we put a point into Alloy Animation, which it increases the mana cost and duration. But we have 2 Blade Storms now. And it also means that our Blade Storms can hit the same target. Gotcha. So I was wasting mana earlier trying to keep up multiple Blade Storms. I cannot read. That's okay. I suppose now it'll do more damage. Oh, and they are so much faster at seeking out targets. I love it. Look at them go. And the DPS on that is insane now. But so is the mana cost. But the duration is longer, so I suppose it's probably a fair trade-off. Who knows? I'm not going to do the calculations on it right now, that's for sure. Wow. We are absolutely clearing these enemies. Whoever put this build together did a phenomenal job at utilizing these power spikes throughout the game. I have not been paying attention to my gear at all, and yet enemies are dying without a second thought and without me needing to really put a whole lot of thought into this. I think there's a stigma that following a build guide is a bad thing, and I'm a little torn. I love making my own builds in games like this. It's satisfying, it's thought-provoking, it's fun. But at the same time, not everybody is going to enjoy the process of making a build. And that's okay. That is perfectly fine. I think both opinions are valid. People who don't want to follow a build guide don't have to. But that doesn't mean that they should stigmatize that following a build guide means you're bad at a game, per se. I mean, I probably can't say anything right now because I'm being incredibly lazy with how I am building my character, but that is just fine with me. Ooh, this gives us ward. We don't really utilize ward. I would love to have some increased mana regeneration. We have a crab. You know what? I'm gonna keep him. We have a crab. His name is Noise. That is adorable. We no longer have evade, but who needs evade when we have Crabbo? Not I, said Bodhi. Not I. We have our dodge anyway, so. Little things like this are what make this game so endearing sometimes. Replace your dodge with crab. And we have crab. Summoned lobster. That doesn't look like a lobster to me, game. But who am I to disagree? We can get different crabs. Oh, that's amazing. Oh man, and it's a great little decoy for us too. That's awesome. I love that. Oh, last epoch. You make me happy sometimes. We get a pet dog, you know. Behold, dog. If you are still awake, I am someone who suffers from a pretty severe anxiety disorder. And if that is the reason for your lack of sleep and your difficulty with falling asleep, I was told something a small time ago by a friend of mine who I respect dearly when it comes to talking about mental health. And out of all of the times that I have had panic attacks, anxiety attacks, and these, terrifying things that my brain does to continually provoke that fight or flight response and send adrenaline pumping through my blood, none of it has ever amounted to how I thought it was going to amount. The thing that always immediately popped into my head whenever I started getting the chest pains of a panic attack was that I was having a heart attack. And I'm a pretty healthy person. I work out, I eat healthy, I cook all my own meals, I avoid fast food very, very, devoutly. And so there's no reason I should be fearing this. I don't have a medical condition or anything along those lines. But my brain, in those moments, wants to jump to the worst possible scenario. And when I had a conversation with my friend the other night, I say the other night, at this point it's been about a month, he told me to think about it logically, because we both are very logical people. How many times has this happened with me? And has the feelings that my brain has been sending me been real? How much of that has actually come to fruition? And the answer is never. I went to the hospital once because I thought I was having heart problems from a panic attack. And they told me I was fine. And they ran a bunch of tests, put me under an EKG. But at the end of all of it, I was perfectly healthy. It was just a panic attack that I couldn't control. And shortly thereafter, I started looking into getting on medication to help me with my anxiety. And help is okay. It took me a long time to understand that I have pretty deeply rooted anxietal issues, and I don't need to deal with them alone. I have many people around me that are here to support me, and it's okay to rely on the people you love because you're going to do the same for them. And that's all that matters. Love has many forms, whether it's being there in a time of somebody's need or, remembering somebody's favorite color or remembering a date that just happened to catch your mind, or sending somebody an old photo that you guys took together to bring back that memory of a day, or cooking somebody their favorite dessert on a bad day, or sitting inside by each other during a nice, cold, rainy day just to enjoy each other's company. I'm not saying love is necessary in life, although I would argue more than anything, self-love is what is most important. I think a lot of people want to rely on others to make them happy, and that is a dangerous hole to fall into. Personally, I believe that finding your own happiness and being able to be accepted by yourself is what opens the door to so much in life. There's no reason to hate yourself, ever, unless you're some kind of serial murderer or rapist or some pedophilic child abuser. There is no reason to hate yourself. At least in my opinion. Almost every human being in this world has value. And it took me a long time to understand that no matter what I do, no matter how angry I get with myself for a mistake I've made or a social interaction I've messed up, everything's gonna pass. Even if I were to die tomorrow, I would have made the people in my life happy. I would have impacted them and changed their life for the better in some way. And there is genuine value in the fact that you are seen. Even if it might not seem like it sometimes. Trust me, it might not seem like it a lot of the time. But everybody has value. Except, of course, the child touchers. Those can, not exist. That would be of benefit to just about everybody in the world. Especially the children. Sorry, jokes aside. Very serious topic. I personally found my own way to be happy and comfortable with myself at a pretty young age. And from there on, it's more about just spreading joy to the people I care and love, I don't want anybody to have to deal with the stuff I go through fairly often. It's not fun. I will say, I've been having panic attacks less and less often for a while now, which is amazing. I think it's partially because of course, medication, but Also because I've been genuinely trying to work on myself. You know, I might be getting up there in years. I might be a little older, but I think there is always time to change and improve on oneself, to be a better person than you were yesterday, and to improve on your morals and your ability to accept change. Because that's all it really boils down to, is willingness and acceptance to change. Whether it's accepting that you have a problem that you need help with, or changing a small daily habit to be better for you. Any kind of positive change in your life is just something that you have to push toward. Oh my lord, all the runes. So, while I'm sitting here giving you my TED talk about self-improvement, it is much easier said than done. I will agree to that. I can sit here and talk about all the things that I've done to change myself, but it has been a commitment to do so, and that's okay. Committing to change that you want for yourself and for the people around you is important. I think more than anything, it's a battle of and show of will. I want to be the best version of me that I can be, you know? And I think everybody should aspire to do that. Except if you're Hitler, then maybe don't try to be the best Hitler you can. that's probably not the best. But, that's just my opinion. And here we are at Majelka. We're making fairly decent progress. Maybe it's because I've played through the campaign so many times, but maybe not. I don't know. This build does make leveling very, very smooth. To the Oracle's abode. Another sip of tea. And we're in the next town. And our last skill point into Peltist. Oh, also, let's go ahead and plop another skill point into here. Directly casting Bladestorm throws up to your maximum number of Bladestorms in a spread in front of you, but Bladestorm has an... Alright, that's fine. So now we throw out the 2 immediately, and then we can just go for Umbral Blades on everything. Cool. And here's another small side quest to do, to return to the Shining Cove. We can go ahead and sell some items. We do need a dagger in our offhand. Do you think it's time to get rid of that unique? Another one-handed sword would be great. A falchion if we come across it. Let's look at this necklace. Lightning resistance, spell damage, necrotic damage, elemental resistance, and poison resistance. We are going to swap this. Neither of those uniques really fit the build we want. We're going to buy all of the runes of shattering that we can. and move on. And to the Majelkin Catacombs we go. Alrighty. So now we only have to throw our blades once, and then we can continue it to throw out our little explosive knives. I love the subtle echo that the voices have in this area. I keep forgetting that our spacebar summons our friendly crab. That's adorable. And we have unlocked another skill specialization, which we will take a look at momentarily when I know we're not going to die. So the level of this area is 35. We have somehow caught up in levels, even though I feel as though I've been jumping past more enemies than I was previously. But who knows? Oh, we are out of health potions. I am going to run. Never mind. Ah, we were killed by bleed damage. Ooh, this is a far run back. That is unfortunate. So recently, I've been rewatching a lot of old movies that I had growing up. Emperor's New Groove, the old Kung Fu Panda movies, a lot of animated classics. And I did kind of realize something that I'm almost a little sad about. There are so many movies nowadays that come out that just, they don't have good stories. And I know it's probably like a boomer take and an L take, and maybe I just haven't been watching the right movies, but I feel as though the animated side of films have been very lackluster, for lack of a better word. I was not looking at my health bar. No. Oh, thank gosh. We don't have to walk back the whole way. Yes, so the squishiness of this build is indeed making itself apparent, but like I said, we're not a hardcore character or anything, so I'm not too worried about dying. If I remember correctly, there isn't a penalty for death in Last Epoch, but I may be wrong. I know there is once you get to the monoliths, but that's more of just you fail your instance. You have to find another way to go. The vengeful remains of a harbinger's victim lay nearby. Ow. There we go. Leeching Sickle of Acid. One-handed axe. Melee damage leeched as health. That is something we've been looking for a pretty long time. 9 armor, poison resistance, detonating arrow. Interesting. Aha, there we go. Melee attack speed and throwing attack speed. Although the freeze rate multiplier isn't something that'll help us very much. That's alright though. It's at least a base that we can use. I keep saying we need to add smoke bomb into our specializations. But I keep forgetting to do that. So we're going to take the duration notes, and then we're going to take 1 into smoke blades, 3 points into umbral assault. Sorry, 4 points into umbral assault, but we only have 3 at the moment. I love that we get like different colored crabs every time we summon him. Go get him, boy. Legendary idol, and many items to filter through really quick. Healing effectiveness, this isn't for us. Actually, not many items for us to filter through. And that's okay. Go get him, crab. Good boy. So, we are nearing the end of this chapter. Again. The sound design of all the creepy gears spinning and stuff is always entertaining. Ah, another loot lizard. Hello, friend. I've been hit by a rock and that almost killed me. There we go. Loot lizard down. And rare unit down. The loot lizard dropped a bunch of idols. We'll have to take a look at those momentarily. Man. I myself am starting to wind down. It's very near my bedtime. I have to be up at 9 a.m. to take care of my animals. And also, I have work to get done tomorrow, but such is life. So, we are at the Majelka way station. And from here on out, I think this leads to the final boss of the area. Let's see where to spend our skill points. More thrown damage. Yep, we are putting 5 points into this. And then also the umbral blades, get 4 points into this. And we have another thing to spend in Spoke Bomb. Okay. So here we are. The artificial waypoint. And now we are in the desert way station. And with that, I think I shall end today's episode. Thank you guys so much for joining me on this nice, relaxing journey through the opening acts of Last Epoch. I hope you rest well and get some deserved sleep. And if the next episode is up already, I will see you there.